Are we ready to go then? Okay. Council will call this meeting to order. For the record, it is February 10th, 2026 at 4:30 PM. We'll begin this afternoon's work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh. Here. Councilman Taylor. Here. Councilwoman Strader.
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts. Here. Councilman Overton.
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Next item up is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
no changes to the agenda. I move we adopt as published.
Second.
Motion and second to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is agreed to. Next up is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
changes to the consent agenda. I move that we approve the consent agenda for the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest.
Have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is agreed to. There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so we'll move on to department reports. First item up is item 16, which is approval of Toll Brothers bid results for public-private partnership agreement dated December 2nd, 2025. Director McKay.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. So just as a reminder, we back in December entered into this agreement with Toll Brothers. Essentially, they will pay for a portion of a trunk line that was in our CFP that the city was planning to pay for. They will construct it and then we will reimburse them for half of those costs when the costs were planned in our CFP. So we signed that agreement back in December. In that agreement, there were several clauses. One was that we could bring the contract back to council if the bid came in higher than the engineer's estimate. We did just get the bids back. They received 4 bids. One was deemed non-complete. They ranged from 7.3 million to 15.6 million. Our engineer's estimate was 6.6 million, so a little bit shy of the low bid, which is not totally uncommon in our current bidding scenario. But we wanted to come forward, and Public Works is still recommending that we proceed with this project, primarily because it saves significant cost for the city based on what doing it ourselves in the next couple of years. So just wanted to come give you that update. I don't think we need a formal vote, but just kind of, I guess Keith can correct me, but just a kind of acceptance that everybody's okay moving, continuing with the signed agreement. We don't have to change it.
Thank you. And ultimately, council, I would appreciate at least a voice vote on this item, rather than
Okay.
head nods on that. So any questions from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Strader.
does this represent the totality of the project cost or what other costs would be left once this bid is awarded?
Good question. So there are a couple of other ancillary costs. So 50% of the construction cost in the contract, we did agree to a cap of 5% of change orders. And then we did agree to some project construction manager costs and some soft costs. So we have a couple $100,000 more than just the bid costs, but those have all been accounted for.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Taylor.
Lorelei, can you, you might just be reminding me of what I've already heard you say, so I apologize. As we move forward, and if there are some big cost overruns as the project moves ahead, what obligation do we have as a city council? Would you be coming back with budget amendments? Does it have to fit within what they're scoping out here for us? Just kind of walk me through that, because I understand in an environment where bidding and inflation and massive construction driving costs here in the Treasure Valley, I can understand why some of the bids would come back where they are. Just want to make sure as we move ahead, if things are much higher than anticipated, what protections do we have in the contract or the agreement that we have right now?
So the contract protects us. Anything over that 5% cap is the sole responsibility of the contractor, so Toll Brothers. So we would not be liable for anything above and beyond. I think that equates to a little over $362,000. So any unforeseen circumstance, if that occurred and it was something well above that, I think Toll Brothers would have to come back to you and ask for you to do an amendment to the contract, but we would not be obligated to pay them more than that 5% cap.
Council, any additional questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Roberts.
there are no other comments. I would like to make a motion that we approve the Toll Brothers bid results and proceed. Partnership agreement dated December 2nd, 2025.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Strader.
Sure. I just want to explain, I was not in support of this process just philosophically because I don't believe that development should be leading our infrastructure build. I believe that we should be leading it and then development should follow in a more orderly way. But I respect that this is the direction that the council is going in. And so I will vote in support of this because of that collective action that we've taken.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
I just did want to comment. I think we kind of dug into this quite a bit through the budget setting process and some of the follow-up conversations. And do you feel like we explored, is the city protected? The private developer seems fully aware of the risk that they're taking on when it comes to this. So yeah, I think I just kind of want to remind ourselves that we kind of vetted this out, and I feel like we're still on safe ground, and I think this is a good thing for the city, so I'll be supporting it.
Anything further? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post nay. The ayes have it, and the item is agreed to. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 17, which is Downtown Overlay District and Design Guidelines discussion. Turn this over to Mr. McClure.
Mayor and City Council, as you just said, we're here to talk about design standards and specifically an overlay approach to those downtown. Staff are here tonight to follow up, or this afternoon, to follow up on discussion between MDC and City Council regarding design standards. As a reminder, one of the challenges is that we have many boundaries and designations that are often inconsistent. The challenge is that we end up with different design standards for adjacent properties, sometimes even with a similarly use. The existing tools can work, but are case by case and are more subjective, relying on URD for participation. The overlay approach is intended to help with that. Overlays are a consistency check for standards that are based on geography and agnostic to zoning. Properties retain underlying zoning or entitlements with an overlay. Overlays help to coordinate designs such as frontage requirements across underlying zoning. Overlays may help to provide more consistency in development review across properties regardless of base zoning. And overlays do not delay or create additional time in the development review process, at least themselves. And sort of the disclaimer asterisk there is that if we make use of a design review committee more often, which is some of the request, that may increase when applicants don't follow the standards. The alternative process would be a committee rather than staff. The approach for this work is contemplated as 3 phases. Tool, identify the geography, and develop the standards. The idea here is to start making progress without pre-committing to design outcomes. Start high and work in detail. This preserves council decision points and allows some flexibility, not starting with the most complex work first and not making any one decision later unwieldy. Some phases can occur simultaneously. In fact, most of these would need to start in some fashion immediately just to get this done in a reasonable timeframe. Creating the tool is an amendment to the UDC. This would be to establish and authorize overlay districts. Mechanically, the primary purpose is to establish a hierarchy for administrative processes. Where does the overlay fit into the context of other decision points, administration and hearing decision processes, for example? An overlay, just like a base zone, is usable anywhere in the city, but the purpose could put sideboards on the intent, generally to downtown. What's left after the overlay district tool is created is defining the area. The tool doesn't do anything without understanding where this would apply. And then, of course, equally important would be creating the standards. The geography phase and concept is simple. The primary effort is just to codify the area and then show it on the map. Coming to terms, however, with the boundary, drawing it is more complex. We have to be respectful towards the comp plan, be aware of the patchwork zoning related to what MDC is proposing, and find common ground in these elements. This step is more specific. Stakeholder engagement is contemplated as we're actively, and we would be actively in a listening phase before making a recommendation to City Council. This will take time to work through, and I don't think it'll be easy. Some consultant support may be helpful for outreach. Development of standards comes after this phase. If phase 2 is adopted before phase 3, and we don't need to decide now, then clear process is needed on how redevelopment occurs in the interim. Likely that's just modifying the architectural standards manual to say business as usual, but we would need to be clear. And we don't have to do phase 2 and phase 3 at different times. They're sort of helpful buckets to think about this in. Phase 3 is the heavy lift. This will take time to start and get moving. More involvement by more departments, more commissions, more agencies. Staff will likely need consultant support for both outreach and technical review. There's budget and paperwork there. We would need to draft standards for the public to respond to, for the committee to respond to. Stakeholders would include residents, businesses, and some sort of technical review committee with designers, developers, and infill experts. Most of this work, at least as currently envisioned, would be complementary to the architectural standards manual, with either modifications or new sections added. It's very possible that we would identify other areas of city code that would also need to be touched up through this work. An example would be Title 8, so not the UDC. There's a section in there on the city core. We have a license agreement with ACHD for an area downtown. That, for example, may need to be modified. It depends on the boundaries. And if not previously, we would need to put a finer detail on how administrative design review works. I mentioned this beginning, but if staff says no because you don't meet those standards and you fall outside of those sideboards that these new standards set, what does that look like for appealing? So does it go to design review committee? If design review committee says no, who does that go to? Other things have to be thought through. Here's a simple timeline as proposed. This looks linear, but not necessarily. Again, we would contemplate doing most of these at the same time. They just would fall on different timelines to be completed. We'd like to have one overlay tool scheduled by the summer. We'd like to have some understanding of the geography by the end of the year. And finally, to have the completed bulk of the standards by next year, summer next year. As an aside, I do want to stress that this process is not going to be easy. Downtown design review is complex anywhere. It often doesn't work. People don't finish it. People have strong feelings, and it is also easy to overcorrect. It's going to take hard work. It's going to require difficult decisions, and accountability to cross the finish line is important. This slide is a summary of the phased approach from the lens of council decision-making. Each phase would require council approval. Some of that may just be soft approvals with final approval and an ordinance, for example, later. But the goal is to keep any one decision from getting too large at the end. Additional conversations may also be beneficial or as council desires. And no functional process changes would occur without council decision. Today, we're asking council to confirm the general approach here, and I'm also happy to take any questions or pivot as directed.
All right, thank you, Brian. Council, questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Taylor.
First, let me just say, Brian and Caleb, just really appreciate your work on this. Been with you in a few meetings and just kind of listen to you think through it and talk through it. And every time we kind of revisit this, I can see a lot of work's been done in the interim. So I really appreciate that. I thought the memo was really well articulated. I thought I had a lot of thoughts that were just sort of flowing and random in my mind, and you kind of helped crystallize it with the memo. So I do appreciate that. A couple of questions. can you walk me through the process of what it would look like for the code changes, sort of the step one? And my question is based in my recollection of thinking of the 10-mile overlay. I'm trying to understand, you're suggesting it's quite a bit of work to sort of update the UDC to kind of move in this direction. I was working under the assumption that we could already do these kinds of overlays, but just help me understand that a little bit better. I just want to kind of track along with that. I kind of was under the assumption we could already do these overlays fairly easily, but maybe that's not the case. So could you just speak to that for a minute?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Taylor. Yeah, so our current code, it doesn't say we can do overlays. It's just set up to implement it pretty easily. It is definitely the easiest step to make any of this happen. So I wouldn't say it's complex, or requires a lot of work. I've already talked to legal about some of this, some ideas. Like I said, I think we could start moving it forward really quickly. To your question on 10 Mile, and I'm not sure which overlay you mean. So there's a 10-mile specific area plan. So that one struggles because it was a vision document at the comp plan level. It didn't have any codified rules, and a lot of it was frankly ahead of its time. This would be using our architectural standards manual that we have now through what's code already does, which is to establish the administrative design review process, and we would be sticking that onto that. So where the 10-mile plan is sort of lofty vision, this would just be, this is actually what the book says, and we follow that.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, follow up.
Councilman Taylor.
That's a great distinction. I appreciate that, because I was really, I'm envisioning when we get to the end of this process, what we've decided on will be a lot more binding in what we do. And I do remember a discussion maybe a year and a half ago about the 10-mile area specific plan. And I remember in my mind thinking, there's nothing binding here. Like, we can make some adjustments without really going against something that's written that we've agreed we want to kind of follow. So that, I appreciate that distinction. That helps me understand that. Step two, we've talked about what is downtown and sort of the geography around it and what do we want to include in the overlay. But then you also talked about sub areas within that. Can you, and again, I could maybe just be forgetting previous things I've said or thought about that. Can you walk me through what, as you've explored that, what does that look like? Because I was sort of envisioning, here's the overlay area, but you're, in the memo at least, it talks about these sub areas to identify. Can you just kind of give me a little, touch a little bit more on what that might look like?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Taylor, there's a lot of different boundaries that don't align very well that we currently have. So we have the city core, for example, I mentioned that's in Title 8. We have the future land use map designation for Old Town. We have zoning designations, which are Swiss cheese. We have the urban renewal district boundaries. And then we have MDC's new destination downtown plan 2.0, which has some of its own boundaries. They don't jive very well, all those things together. And so we have to sort of understand what's the overall area where we want to address. And then that would be the overlay. And then the standards themselves could break that into greater distinction. For example, we have residential areas on the west and east. MDC's plan calls for some focus on the railroad corridor. We have traditional city core where we're here at now, also known as the city core. So those standards could dive into greater detail. I don't have a preconceived notion for how that looks right now. I haven't been able to wrap my head around it.
Okay.
Just maybe add a little bit more color to that. I think the idea then is that there'd be different standards in those areas, right? So it's all within the overlay district, but what applies and the standards we're looking for are going to vary geographically within the overlay district.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Taylor.
And that, I appreciate that, because that's kind of what I was thinking was the unique characteristics within a broader overlay may not, the standards we decide on may not lend themselves well along the rail corridor versus, closer to Fairview or wherever that might be. So, okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Brian, Caleb, I kind of want to stick with kind of the theme that Councilmember Taylor's first introduced. And as I was going through this, I was thinking a lot about the 10-mile specific area plan, and Councilmember Taylor flagged about a year and change ago council had some different interpretations or different direction about where we should head in the 10-mile specific area plan, as opposed to what had been conceived when the plan was first put together. And so that's kind of what's framing some of my questions, which is, does it make sense as we're kind of fleshing out this overlay area that it comes with either a reauthorization date or a sunset? Thinking, okay, we think we know what's best today. Is that going to be the same answer 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now? Maybe, maybe not. I think we have less flexibility in kind of this overlay than maybe we had with the 10-mile specific area plan. I'm just trying to get a good sense about, will there be a provision that will provide flexibility if the council's direction changes? And how do we formalize that? So that is something that we either anticipate, again, either we're going to reauthorize it every 15 years or every 10 years, or, hey, this is going to run for a predetermined amount of time and then sunsets unless there's an action taken by the council.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, part of that question would probably have to be for Mr. Neri. This is a type of zoning. I don't know if you can sort of sunset a zoning, the overlay portion on properties. In terms of whether council has different feelings or things don't work out, nothing's perfect and we might want to change. The standards themselves are fairly easy to change. So we could have that process whenever we wanted. The boundaries could be refined. The overlay itself could be, it would be a zoning map amendment, but the overlay itself could be amended. But again, I don't know whether you can just sunset it or not. But the standards themselves, like I imagine we haven't changed the ASM for 15 years. So it's actually worked okay, or 10 years, 12 years. We haven't changed it for a long time. So it's worked okay. I don't imagine this is going to work like that because downtown is it's special. There's so much diversity there. But I don't think it's going to be difficult to modify the standards in areas as we see fit.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so it's not very clear in the Idaho code. There's no directive on whether you could have a sunset clause or not. But I guess if trying to align it with zoning code, courts would not be favorable to have a zoning code that dissolved or changed that way. So because it is similar to a zoning code, I think like Brian said, I mean, obviously you're always able to change it and there's a process in which to change it. But to have some sort of sunset in there, I don't know that would be supportable. So I wouldn't recommend that, but I think there's certainly enough eyes on it and fluidity that if you have concerns or issues come before you over time as it develops, that people will bring that to your attention and you can revisit.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Kavner.
all for either Caleb, Brian, or Bill. Would we review this overlay district holistically as part of a comprehensive plan update?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, one of the reasons for the overlay approach is because time is sensitive, and we didn't want to wait going through a whole comp plan overview. And so the overlay would allow us to be responsive to the current future land use boundaries, with some fade that a little bit around the edges, adapt it to the existing environment a bit. We're not contemplating a massive comp plan update right now. We could, or we could follow up later on with one. But right now we're planning on moving forward with this and not doing comp plan until some refresh.
Mr. Mayor, if I can clarify,
Councilman Kavner.
Brian, totally tracking with you. I guess I'm looking into the future. So 15 years from now, the city of Meridian is embarking on a comprehensive plan update citywide. Would this overlay district be incorporated as to part of that planning process? I guess what I'm trying to find is there a formal or informal pit stop along the way where council can evaluate this, not in terms of there's an application that is now in front of us, we want to change the standards, but looking at it more objectively, like, okay, we've noticed that maybe this isn't working and we want to make that change. And how do we do that in a manner that is consistent with all of our other planning as opposed to reacting to a request that's in front of us?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Kavner, a good question. I haven't really thought about this, so we'll just have a little bit of a conversation here. I think it's something we can do, some similar to, again, a check-in, maybe not a sunset, but something where we're looking at this and bringing it to our community. Is this working? Get some feedback. Um, not to just regurgitate what Mr. Neri said, but I think, you know, we tried a little bit and some things maybe won't work even initially and we've got to amend it. I don't think this is something that's just not, it's going to be forgotten about and we just get so used to using it. We aren't saying, hey, how can we tweak this and make it even better? Again, haven't fully thought through that. I think the comp plan, as you bring up, is a good opportunity to take that out, you know, to the public and say, hey, we have this. If you're familiar with it, how do you think it's working? What can we do to improve it? Those types of things. And I think there will be checkpoints along the way over time, over the years. You know, we can even set something up where it's a, you know, once every couple of years, come in and check in with council. Hey, how do you feel it's working? Are you getting feedback? Do we need to do an amendment or not? I mean, that's what we do with the UDC focus group, right? The text changes. Well, we're talking about code of the city. So I could see it working its way through that UDC focus group too. And if there's standards that need to be reevaluated and discussed further, you know, I don't know what that cadence necessarily is, but I certainly envision ways to check in and make sure it's working or not and change it if not.
Well, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I mean, historically, whenever we have had any, you know, larger scale look at a comp plan, we've always, especially on the full scale, we've looked at all of the areas around town, all the areas that are either other urban renewal districts that we've created, other types of or other types of focus areas that we've created. So I wouldn't imagine you wouldn't be looking at that if you were going to do some larger look at the comp plan in general. You're going to identify what's existing out there. Anyway, that's a normal beginning process of it, as a sort of a check-in on what's already out there. So I wouldn't think this would be any different.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just one more thing to add to that. I guess I wouldn't even be comfortable bringing this to you now if I didn't think we had enough already within our comprehensive plan that supported an effort like this. I think we already have things, and even the strategic plan, we have some things that talk about making our downtown a destination. And I think this effort furthers some of those things that we've done as community outreach and have in some of those documents, even though, you know, Destination Downtown 2.0 isn't necessarily the cities. There's been some outreach. And again, our current comprehensive plan and some of those things for our downtown, I think, support what we're talking about this afternoon. But again, not that we can't keep talking about that, but I think there's enough there where we're focusing efforts downtown is a common thread in our comprehensive plan today.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Strader.
Thank you. Yeah, one fear I have that really frustrated me with the 10-mile specific area plan is, like, I hate for us to put a ton of resources and effort into a plan and then get, you know, distance from that plan, and then the plan's not useful anymore, or we're not adhering to it, and it just kind of gets phased out informally. Like, I think that's a big waste. So I just want to chime in. I think this point about some mechanism of re-reviewing it and discussing it, I think is important. I'd be very comfortable if we're all just committed to, like, the next time we update the comprehensive plan is at X date, and at that time we'll look at it. That's okay with me. I just want to understand what the cadence will be for kind of making sure that city councils continue to buy into it. So I think that's important consideration. I do have a couple questions. What teeth does an overlay have relative to zoning is a question that I have. And then, do we really need consultant support for this? I want to understand that better. I think we don't have to understand that today, but I think we need to understand that just relative to your team's workload. Is that really necessary? So those are kind of my first two questions.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Strader, I think maybe working backwards a little bit in that, yeah, a little bit TBD on consultant help. I think we need some. Don't know exactly until we kind of get into it a little bit. And I think there is something to be said for maybe helping us too with the outreach piece of this. And depending on how big we go with that, having a firm that can kind of help us again with the messaging, knocking on doors, potentially website, what kind of those types of things, kind of depending on what we're doing. So we haven't had all those conversations with the mayor's office potentially to how are we going to organize things or advertise things and open houses and those types of activities. So it is kind of a TBD. We do have in the CFP kind of a placeholder right now for the FY27 budget to use some of that for both a comp plan update as well as some consultant help for this particular project. But right now it's just sort of a wag. We really don't know because we don't have scope of necessarily everything that we would need a consultant to do. We do think we have some in-house resources. But Brian and I have both been with this organization for quite some time and we've not done this. So we kind of don't know what we don't know. But as we get putting it together a little bit more, I think that is something that, we have identified as getting some third-party help. So it isn't just, and it's not just for optics, but so it isn't just the city, pitching this. There's someone that is sort of they're a hired gun neutral third party though, that has some backing. They've done this. They can explain and kind of come with that, I want to say reputation, but just, some, they've done it before and it can explain and even help staff through the process, developing some of this. I do want to go then to the first part of that question. This is totally different than the 10 mile. And again, that's sort of phase one is the enabling. These are standards. There isn't, the gray area won't really be there. There will be some things, again, depending, potentially through a design review committee and reviewing some of those elements of a site plan. But it is a lot different. Like Brian said, the 10-mile plan was a visionary document, didn't have this enabling piece of it, right? It was more the vision. We hope you'll do these types of things. This is what we're trying to get as development occurs. What we didn't do with the 10-mile is something like this that says, okay, here's what your roads need to look like. Here's what the street light needs to look like. Here's the standards for them. It was more hopeful, right? And we didn't have, this would be in the code and these would be shalls and not shoulds or mays. So that really is the main difference. Again, and we haven't developed the standards yet, so we aren't quite sure what the shalls are going to be even just yet, but that's the idea, is it is consistent throughout whatever geographical area we define. These are those elements where we want to see that consistency. So hopefully that helps, but I think that is a really good, important distinction to make between the 10-mile specific area plan, which was a planning document, and this, which will be codified in ordinance in the law.
Mr. Mayor, just to add to that, and Councilwoman Strader, a lot of the standards we have to some degree now. A lot of what MDC's proposed, in my opinion, is pretty close to some standards we have for any given zoning designation. Part of the problem is you can have very different standards applied to properties right next to each other currently, and there's no cohesive development patterns for that because one's residential, one's commercial, one's mixed use. They have different standards based off different zones. Those are all very achievable. Staff do those every day through administrative design review. There's some shortcomings to that, but they are standards and they happen all the time without any issue. I think part of this process is intended to get some cohesive patterns happening with those standards now. So they're happening for downtown, not based off of the zoning, but based off of this overlay. So I don't think this is anything, if it helps others, I don't think this is anything like the 10-mile plan because these are very achievable standards. We're not seeking to up in the apple cart here. It's I think it's very achievable. And then maybe just to also help with what Caleb said, part of what I'm receiving information is, we're not in a rush, don't get this done, but we're also running out of time. Like years have gone by. We don't want to see problems of the past happen again. Consultant support is helpful when we want to be more responsive to things and we have other projects and priorities. So, if everything else is dumped off of our list, it's easier to prioritize and get something done. But not that it isn't nice to have someone else's credentials lend support to an effort. But there's just other things going on.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Strader.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think just generally, I'm supportive of this approach. Like, I think you have a phased approach. I think it makes sense. Like, I'm supportive of the concept of creating an overlay, but where I'm, I guess, a little bit just wanting to make sure that whatever we set up is actually something that could be leveraged citywide, because in our strategic plan that we're considering, right, but we haven't finalized, we're thinking about some citywide aesthetics and ideas. And I think that this could be a really logical kind of a pilot approach of setting up kind of a design review committee, if that's where it goes, or other mechanisms that could be leveraged citywide. So I actually think this could be really good strategic work. I just want to make sure what we're doing is sustainable and people will buy into it. It sounds like because it's part of the code, we wouldn't run into necessarily the same challenges that we ran into with the 10-mile plan, because yeah, I agree that was a big shortcoming with that approach that we just saw in recent years when it got kind of outdated. On the consultant, piece of it, I mean, obviously, just encourage you to think really carefully about what the scope is that your team can support internally and what you truly need a consultant for. If certainly multifamily activity is lower. I think commercial activity is high. We still see a lot of single family residential. I know there have been, staffing changes and stuff. There's a lot going on with your team. So I think just thinking that through, with Dave and everybody, just what's the capacity? How do we handle it? What do we exactly need a consultant for and what do we not need one for, I think is important. So I'm holistically supportive of this approach, knowing that we would be, checking in again. I think there are some things that need to be ironed out. But I think overall it's a good phased approach.
Mr. Mayor, can I respond to the consultant again? Again, we don't have this totally scoped out of what we may or may not need consultant help for. And some of that is, like I said before, TBD. We're hoping for a lot of volunteers, but if we don't get that, we may have to hire an architect to get on the team. So that is sort of what the hope is. And that's for a lot of these tasks within the project, hopeful that we can work on things. But if, again, this needs to be a grandiose task all of a sudden, we may need to reach out and say, we just can't. We could do it, but it might take longer. So do we want to hire someone to help us, or can you wait and we'll do it in twice the amount of time? So I think there's some future decision points to come. We're trying to be thoughtful about this. And just wanted to put that out there that, likely at some point for something or two in this project, we'll probably need some help.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Overton.
Ryan, Caleb, my fellow council members have raised some excellent points. I kind of want to take it back a little bit, because I believe what we're here for tonight is to embrace the concept of overlay districts and give you a go ahead or a not go ahead to get a modified UDC, bring that back in front of us to approve overlay districts citywide, so that you can then begin to build the overlay district for downtown and start that. I think we're going to have a lot of questions on what that overlay district downtown is going to look like. I think I do like the concept. I'm going to have a lot of questions, but I don't have questions tonight. I think they're a little premature. I agree with Councilwoman Strader. I agree with the concept of the overlay districts and the approval of them citywide, but they only get established individually. I don't think we're here tonight to even tell us what the parameters would be of the size and shape of a downtown overlay district compared to what everything else is with zoning districts and MDC. I think a lot of that's a little premature, and we'll get there. But if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you really need tonight is just council approval to move forward with establishing an overlay district in our code, so you can begin to build the first one for our downtown. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Overton, I think that was a really good summary, maybe just a finer point on that. And it came up even in the last question. We don't have, right now, we don't have any other overlay districts envisioned. This is for the downtown. So it's not, it could be South Meridian, there's a design aesthetic. We would have it at our disposal. It would be a tool that we can use citywide, but this isn't something where we're planning on having 20 overlay districts citywide. So I just want to make that clarification. I think that is, we want some general, are we heading in the right direction? Because if not, stop us now before we spin our wheels. This is kind of where we're going. We'll check back in a little bit with that enabling ordinance. It says, hey, City of Meridian can do overlay districts now. We won't have any at that point in time, but it just says, hey, we're moving towards this. And then you just kind of saw that calendar a year or so later is when we really anticipate having something to say, yeah, here's that geographical area where our first overlay district, and maybe our one and only, who knows, overlay district is, and the way that that's going to operate. So thank you for summarizing and bringing us back to tonight.
Mr. Mayor, quick follow-up.
Councilman Overton.
I just wanted to then say that I am in support of this moving forward. I think that you've got a council that's very vested in what this is going to look like. And we're going to continue to barrage you with questions as this is designed because we've never had anything like it before. But I'll certainly support moving forward with the change to UDC and developing the code for having overlay districts citywide, and then letting you bring back forward an overlay district for our downtown area.
So council, I'm going to speak up as well, just because I'm not going to share anything I haven't already shared with the team. So it doesn't matter. I've struggled with this approach that they're offering because I do want to get onto the downtown conversation. You know, that's where I think that this really lies is I hate to put a lot of work into saying, here's our process, here's what we're going to do, here's what's going to be, if we can't come up with something that works in our downtown, which is what we're really trying to be focused on and be timely to that. So I share with the team, my desire would have been to start working on what that downtown would look like first and foremost. And if we like the outcome that we come to, then we can come back and create the overlay and put things into place. We can talk, because I think that we could come up with something over the next 1, 3, 5, 6 months and how we're going to operate these in the future. But it's really, I know that there's a timing issue to some in our downtown that we don't want to lose the investment in that conversation now, maybe before we have some projects that come in the next 1, 3, 6, 9 months. But that's where I've been trying to look at this in a more timely fashion to get something, because even if they're not adopted, but we say, here's what we think we want, I think the development community will take that information back. But if we don't get around this to really talking about the standards for the next year, we may miss the boat on some of these items. So I know that there's a process that you would normally go establish them, set the boundaries, design them. I want the team to get together with our downtown partners sooner rather than later to start actually working on what those are. Because if we can't come to an agreement and even in that concept, what's the point of doing all the overlays? And I don't know what that's going to mean. I have no idea what the outcomes are going to be through this process. What does an overlay look and feel like? If it's just taking our current things and put them in code or put it into the overlay. But yeah, I'm getting head shake. So I've struggled with this since this was brought in, and even in the process and the concept of where we go, how much do we put into the effort rather than putting the effort into what the actual standards would be, and then come back and focus on how we apply them and what they look like long term. So just sharing that feedback from myself on, I want to keep the conversation going with our urban renewal district to get those standards established as quickly as possible.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
question. Is there any reason why both can't be tracking parallel? So we could, if we like the framework, but to your point, we want to signal sooner than later what we want to see. Is there anything in giving staff the okay, like let's pursue this, but yet also to your point, being sensitive to some timeliness of what we want downtown? Is one have to come before the other, or do you think that they can be tracking parallel together? And also, let me add to this. What do you envision when you talk about what we want to see downtown? Can you put a finer point on, obviously we got a big project across the way, but is beyond that, is there anything specific you're thinking of?
The first answer is I think that they can maybe do some of it, doing it in conjunction. I mean, but I don't know. And that's when it gets down to, if you're talking about workload, and if we want them to start doing the work themselves, are they focusing on one or the other? And how does that lead? I'll let them answer that question on that. On the second one, it's just generally, I mean, we know of the one across the street where this was, frankly, I'm going to say that was the original design was part of the reason why this even came up, was concerns over that. I'm not going to say that's what the design is going to be, but we have had other parcels out. The old Civic Block project was one. Don't know when those are going to come back, but I just want to make sure that we are not missing out on some other development opportunities should they happen, but nothing specific that I can point to. Mr. Hood?
Yeah, if I can just maybe put a little bit of our thought process, at least thus far. There is a lot of concurrency here. And if I know it's phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 is fairly straightforward. We're already talking about phase 2 and more conceptually phase 3 and some of those standards. But, you know, Brian's already put together exhibits that have all those definitions of downtown. What we need is to figure out who gets to start to draw those lines. And we can start there, but we need some help on who is actually helping us say, this is where we're going to have these standards apply. You know, what does that process even look like? Who do we outreach to and how often? What are those checkpoints? So that is some of where we're at is we are starting to sort of tee it up, but it's going to take a little bit longer than changing the UDC, right? That is a process. So there's a lot of things, phase 1, 2, and 3 are moving concurrently, but it is almost like we can get to the finish line of phase 1 before we can get to the finish line of phase 2. And you sort of need to have where that finish line of phase 2 is before you can really get to phase 3, because if you're designing your standards for residential, but then your district doesn't have any residential, well, you just wasted a bunch of time coming up with standards for residential. So it is a little chicken and egg to some degree there too. But that really, honestly, that's some of what we need is some more. I think some of the next steps is just direction on how your comfort level is with the outreach and the inputs and the stakeholders and kind of getting some of these decision points back to the dais so you can, yep, we're good with that. Keep moving. Yep, this general vicinity. Do we want to go all the way to the freeway north of Fairview? I don't think so, but I don't know that for sure. Are we talking more of the core? So again, those are kind of where we're at with some of these. Phase 2 is underway. It's just not as far along as phase 1.
Mr. Mayor, a quick follow-up.
Councilman Taylor?
Yeah, in some way, I'm kind of almost envisioning as we're doing this, we're also achieving your goal of indicating what we want to see now. I could be wrong, but as we're identifying the geography of the boundaries, talking about some of the design centers, those are happening. We're not going to wait till next summer to actually start the conversation. Those are going to be happening now and going forward. So I think it's a fair point that we should keep in consideration. And I'd also add the point, when we talk about an impact downtown, right, with the expiration of the downtown urban renewal district and then what comes next, we as a council need to be prepared to think through that process and how we envision that going. And that's going to definitely also parlay into this conversation with the overlay, with, destination downtown 2.0. All these things they're just all kind of intertwined in some ways. So yeah, I think, as I see it, I think these things can go together. They serve each other in a similar purpose, but whether or not we need to be more aggressive in the near term of indicating projects we want to see to kind of facilitate those moving along and not waiting for a year for this to be finalized before anything happens. I think it's a valid point. So I'm open to kind of how that might look.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Little Roberts?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I think it's critical that what is already in motion, for the most part, can continue on as this project is being worked on, because we've got some really great momentum starting downtown. And I think the last thing we want to do is put a weight or a slowdown on any of that. I think that things can be happening concurrent, and we've got a time frame on certain things as well. So I think it's really important that we keep as a good a pulse on all lanes as they're all happening together, but I definitely don't want to, for the most part, can even consider slowing anything down at this point.
All right, so bring something back next week and we'll be good to adopt it. No? Okay. I guess to help move, maybe to move on to step 2 or late. I guess I viewed this as looking at our core and our downtown as our primary purpose. Where are we going to start? And I guess from my perspective, I look towards you as the professionals to say, I would hope that you could draw a boundary that you think would be an appropriate boundary for us to start to evaluate that would, I mean, I can in my head. I assume you can as well with maybe a few caveats to go deeper to set that first level conversation. There may be second level, there may be third level, there may be fourth level over time. But I just want to make sure we look at this very manageable to get a win, to get an outcome, to get a success as quickly as we can. And maybe we learn from it. Yeah, I don't want to shortchange what we're doing, but I don't want to get stalled because we can't figure out where to draw a line and to have the conversation. You know, is it Franklin or is it the railroad tracks? Is it Meridian or Third? Does it go beyond that? How far north does it go? That's your heart. That's your core. That's your center to have this base level first conversation. I don't think it goes much beyond that unless you say, well, there's too many factors and we need to move the line because these buildings don't really, or this area won't develop that way. That's just my 2 cents to help us push this quickly so we can get to run the parallel and get into that actual, let's focus on something and show how this can work. That's the end of the day. It's great to do an overlay over the city or say we can do them all over the city, but if we can't get to an outcome quickly and show that it works, I don't know we're going to want to go down this process if it's so cumbersome that we can't move something forward.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Schrader.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we could get bogged down really easily and I honestly would recommend something like, hey, here's option 1, option 2, option 3 of like the maps that you think make sense and just let the council vote on that. That's what I would suggest. Like, I wouldn't like spin your wheels trying to like fine tune with a lot of specificity exactly what, you know, you're going to have an idea. And I think just give us 3 options and have us vote on it would be my suggestion. We can always tweak it, but like, I wouldn't get bogged down in that piece of it. I think the design piece is like the meaty piece that will be really tough. I think we focus more there.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Taylor.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also, you know, the destination downtown draft has some suggestions for maps. I think that's a great place to start and we can adjust accordingly. But, you know, the question will be how big and expansive does it go to the freeway or not? 2 or 3 options and we can discuss those in more detail. And I think it makes a lot of sense to do that.
Did that give you guys enough to move forward with establishing the ability to do overlays and come back with some maps? And then we can move on after we define that to step 3 and then see what resources are needed. Okay. All right. Thank you. And with that, we're at the end of our agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton,
move that we adjourn.
motion second adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Council will call this meeting to order. For the record, it is February 10th, 2026 at 6 p.m. We'll begin tonight's regular city council meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh, Councilman Taylor, Councilwoman Strader,
Here.
Councilman Whitlock,
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts,
Here.
Councilman Overton,
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Next time is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all please rise and join us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I do not see our committee invocation, so we'll move on to adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
there are no changes to tonight's agenda, so I move we approve the agenda as published.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is agreed to. Council, we do have a new item for our agenda called announcements and recognition. So my first announcement is announcement of the new agenda item through that. But does any council member have any comments that they'd like to make on announcements and recognition?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
instructed that I'm going to lead off. I'd like to take a couple minutes to recognize that we lost a very important volunteer recently in Billy Bowles. She was a infectious smile and greeter sitting in our lobby for many, many years. And what's interesting is I didn't know her that well. But I brought my 86-year-old mother into the lobby one day getting her a passport. And she immediately struck up a conversation with Billy because Billy's first life, she ran the desk at Hewlett Packard for many, many years. And my mom spent 25 years working there, and they had a long-standing friendship. And she was this incredible human being who, if you could have given a PhD in friendliness and charm, she would have had it. And she's tremendously missed. And I can't begin to touch on what she's meant to the other volunteers in the city and what her loss will mean for us as we move forward.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Little Roberts.
I would also like to acknowledge what a wonderful volunteer and person Billy was, and it is a tremendous loss for us. I got to know her when she was at Hewlett Packard. I did corporate housing for Hewlett Packard, and you did not get upstairs to talk to the people that made the decisions if you couldn't get past Billy. And I got in there one day and did not have an appointment. Well, I had an appointment, but somehow it didn't get on her books. So if it wasn't on her books, and those were the days where you couldn't pull up your email on your cell phone. And so I got to sit there for a while because although she was wonderful and friendly, you played by Billy rules, which I absolutely loved and adored, which she was all of 5'0", but you still didn't mess with Billy. And she was I just always looked forward to seeing her when I'd walk in and her smiling face, and she is tremendously missed.
Any other? Councilman Cavanagh.
Thanks. The hard one. I didn't get to know Billy in a former life, so I've always kind of viewed her as our original volunteer at City Hall. And selfishly, she was a huge resource because I could walk in and in 15 minutes get the whole lay of everything that's been happening in City Hall in the past week. And I valued that she knew everything that was going on in every corner, who was screwing up, who was doing great. She didn't look it, but Billy was 8 feet tall, and she had a commanding presence, certainly for me. And I knew when I would come in and see her, if I screwed up the week before, I was going to hear about it. If there was something she was concerned with the city, I was going to hear about it. And you've heard me often say up here that, accountability is what we do for somebody, not to someone. And Billy's the one that told me that. And so I just will continue to take that impact that she has made on me moving forward. And I appreciate hearing from my good colleagues about their recollections and memory of her. She is not one who will be forgotten in the Cavanagh household anytime soon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll just add my 2 cents. Yeah, Billy criticized me for your guys' decisions almost every Wednesday for 5 years. But she was that steady, and I didn't want to say it this way, but Billy was the GOAT.
Yeah.
When it came down to volunteerism and, dedication to the city, serving the community, and a friend to many of our employees, frankly, and then the other volunteers. And, health issues kept her away for the last year and a half. But I know that she was still in the hearts and minds of many people. We have people in my office that would go over and, help her out after work on things when there was a need, because she meant that much to everybody. And it was sad to her passing was so quick. And, and I think we all can remember the last time we saw her, but probably should have been one more time than we actually did through that. So, Billy, you will be missed. So on that, any other more happy announcements and recognition to this evening? Okay, then we will move on to public forum. Skirk, you want to sign up on this item?
Mr. Mayor, there were no signups.
Okay, then we will go on to item 1. Item 1 is a resolution appointing Dom Gelsomino to the Meridian Planning and Zoning Commission. So for council, I don't think that anyone up here that doesn't know Dom. If that's the case, I apologize. I assume that everyone's had the opportunity. Dom has also been one of those steadfast volunteers here at the city. He's been 8 years dedicated to our Parks and Recreation Commission, not just at the meetings, but I think that's the definition of going above and beyond. We've seen how Dom transforms his body each December, or at least most Decembers, to be part of our Christmas and Meridian festivities and one of the character highlights for the community. And that's just Dom. Dom shows up, Dom cares. Dom is committed to the community. He's expressed that in many different ways and activities. And so it's with my pleasure that I bring forward Dom to continue that service and dedication. He's going to be in a learning role where he's been in a presidency role. He'd be stepping out of the presidency of the Parks and Rec Commission and into a learning role on planning and zoning, but I have no doubt that he'll be able to pick up that mantle and run with it and be a steady voice on that commission. So it's my pleasure to bring you, Dom, for your consideration. I'll happy to stand for any questions.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Whitlock.
no questions, maybe a comment before I make a motion. There's an old line from the TV show West Wing that I just love. It says, "Decisions are made by those who show up." And Dom has shown up for our community time and time again. I was pleased to see him on our Parks Commission and heading things up, and decisions were made and good things happened in our city because of Dom and his leadership, and that will continue, I'm sure, as he steps into this new role. So with that, Mayor, I would move that we approve resolution number 262567, a resolution appointing Dom to seat 7 of the Meridian Planning and Zoning Commission.
Second for discussion.
Have a motion and a second and recognize Councilwoman Schrader for discussion.
I just wanted to also echo just my appreciation of you, Dom, how amazing you've been serving our community. And I have so much confidence in you stepping into a new role. I think it'll be really exciting for you. And I think our city will benefit from having a fresh perspective. I think it's going to be fantastic for us. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
not much more to be said, except for I do think that Dom is emblematic of a true community servant, and look forward to seeing his impact. I think our Planning and Zoning Commission has really evolved over the past 18 months. I think Dom's going to bring, I think, to Councilmember Strader's comments, a new perspective, but also a lot of institutional knowledge about our city. And I think our Planning and Zoning Commission is going to benefit from that. We as council are going to benefit from his expertise. And so very enthusiastically be in support of this motion tonight.
Any further comments? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. You guys have it. The motion is agreed to. So Dom, welcome. Would you like to come up, make any comments? And as he's coming up, the one thing I didn't share with you, I thought I'd say this till after the vote, is you remember how every community used to require a tot lot? I think now every community may require a dog park. But anyways, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for your trust and your confidence in me over the last 8 years on the Parks Commission, and now as I walk into, as you have all rightly said, a learning experience. And that was the driving force of why I applied and why I was interested in the Planning and Zoning Commission. It wasn't, going on to the next thing, and it wasn't because I was bored with parks. I love Parks and Rec. I love the opportunities that I've had to make partnerships with local businesses to secure amenities for our Discovery Park Dog Park and get, hand sanitizers over at Storybark Park, and having that conversation with our community, working with Julie Bogenkamp at the community garden and getting a second community garden over at Discovery Park as well. But broadening knowledge and expanding my knowledge has always been something that I've pursued. So I'm very, very humbled by the opportunity to do so and to bring my voice to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I do also want to, thank my father and my stepmom for being here tonight. And I also have my mom who's here virtually all the way from Tampa watching. So it's a proud family moment. Thank you all for, again, your trust and your confidence, and look forward to working with you and to upholding that trust and confidence in my years on the Planning and Zoning Commission ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 2, department report, and I will turn this item over to Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before you tonight is a request for reconsideration. Make sure I get this correctly on the record. Request for reconsideration from item H 2025-0015. This is on the Meridian Lux. It is a request from Mary Wall, Professional Engineering Services, for a decision was made previously by this council. Under our city code, they have met the standards as required by the code to request reconsideration. Under that, this is not an opportunity for public testimony or public input. You basically have to make the decision based upon the request that's in front of you on whether you wish to reconsider that. And if so, the council has a couple of different options. You can deny the request. If you wish, you can also grant the request. And if so, then you would set it for a new hearing to hear a full public hearing for both their request of what they would like to see changed, as well as opportunity for the public to weigh in on that change. So it's either up or down on the request. And if it's a affirmative to allow the request to move forward, then we would move for a new hearing and we would set it for a future date.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Mr. Neri?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
can the scope of the new hearing be limited to this one issue, or would it have to be a complete reconsideration of the entire approval?
So, Mr. Mayor, members of Councilmember Schrader, that's within your discretion as well. I mean, you can narrow it to simply the one issue that's before you. The concern obviously is that things of that may evolve beyond that. But if that's the purpose of it, yes, that's how we would notice it, is it's only to rehear this particular one issue.
Any additional questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Taylor.
Bill, can you tell me, I understand what's before us is a decision to deny or grant the request for reconsideration. Are we allowed to discuss, the reasons why there is a request in our decision tonight, or does that need to be limited towards if we decide to grant them the reconsideration and have those facts made available then?
So it's a great question, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Taylor. Certainly there is no testimony. So, but if you need to articulate your reason either to affirmatively grant the request or why you were affirmatively denying the request, you certainly have that ability to explain that as part of your record.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Bill, can you just maybe walk the council through what their options, I guess, in terms of basis for decision-making? If I understand, the request is before us is, did the council err in our decision-making process because we weren't maybe considering of a certain size of tree that was or was not available? I think that's how I view as the request before us, which means ultimately the council needs to determine if they erred in that decision as a result of the tree size, or if the council decision is upheld, that wouldn't prevent the applicant from at a later time coming for a development agreement modification to modify that request that was a condition of approval. Is that fairly accurate?
So, Mr. Members of Council, yes, but
Okay.
it depends. So yes, you are correct. If you were to be denied here, does not foreclose the applicant from any other options that may be available to them, which could include a modification to the agreement. The only thing I would modify from your question was our code says deficient, not error. So the state code does use the word error, but our code uses the word deficient. So here, what they have asked is that it's deficient because of the condition that had been placed on it. That's what they're saying. So they're not necessarily alleging an error on the city's part or the council's part, but merely a deficiency that can't be met.
Further questions? Direction, council?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh?
I'm happy to at least start from where I'm sitting on this. I appreciate the request, a little uncommon, a little unconventional. I don't believe the council was deficient in our decision-making process on this. I'm certainly sympathetic of the perspective that the applicant or the applicant's representative has, but doesn't change the decision that I think that the council made. I don't believe that we erred or were deficient in our decision-making process. So I'm not in a position tonight where I'll be supportive of this request for reconsideration. Again, I appreciate Mr. Neri outlining that if the applicant needs to make a change, that the better approach is to come in and ask for a development agreement modification as opposed to even a request to limit a rehearing of this item in a very, very small subject matter. So that's where I'm sitting tonight. And I won't be in favor of granting a reconsideration. Mr. Mayor, I'm not seeing any, oh, sorry.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Taylor?
as the member of council who made the motion with the very specific conditions, I've been thinking a little bit about this, and I worry a little bit about kind of opening it all back up and having this take on a whole new life of itself. I remember, I don't know, 9 months ago, maybe a year ago, we had a very limited in scope decision, and the hearing ended up being multiple evenings about topics that weren't even relevant to our decision making. And it didn't seem like it was overall a very good experience for the community who maybe felt a little bit misled, and for us as council to kind of go through that. So I think I'm sympathetic to the constraints that they find themselves under. I appreciate Mr. Neri's discussion and saying there's other remedies to fix this, and maybe cleaner, better remedies. Because I think we may really struggle to restrict the testimony that's shared, and we might be giving a sense of false hope to neighbors who are concerned about the project, about what we're going to do. So I think I would advocate that the applicant probably pursue the other remedies that seem a little bit more straightforward. And I'd probably support what Councilman Cavanaugh's position is tonight as well.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh?
we deny the request for reconsideration of conditions of approval, the finding of facts and conclusion of law for Meridian Lux application H-2025-0015.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to deny the request for reconsideration. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Grader. Whitlock.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Overton.
All ayes, motion carries, and the request for consideration is not approved. Okay. With that, we will move on to our public hearings for the evening. First item up is item 3, public hearing for H 2025-0050. Nick, are you doing all these or where's Linda coming in? You doing it? Okay. Turn this over to Nick for staff comments.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So item number 3 on the agenda actually does require a continuance due to the site not being posted correctly. So the applicant and staff have discussed and they're requesting that you guys continue it till, yes, thank you, March 3rd. And I'll stand for questions at this time.
Thank you. Council, any questions for staff? Is the applicant here or online?
I do not believe so.
Okay. So we'll take their word that they're in concurrence with that date. Not that I question your word, just, I know council sometimes likes to hear directly from them on these continuances. Council, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
move that we continue the public hearing for H 2025-0050 until March 3rd of 2026.
Second?
Have a motion, a second to continue this item. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Guys have it. The public hearing is continued. Okay, so next item up is item 4, which is H 2025-0055. We'll open this public hearing with staff comments.
Mayor, members of the council, next item on the agenda is the vacation for well 10B. So the site consists of 0.31 acres of land. It is zoned R8 and is located at 523 West Cedarburg Drive. The comprehensive plan is medium density residential. And the applicant's request tonight is for approval to vacate a 16.6-foot portion of a 26.6-foot easement for public utilities, irrigation, and drainage encumbering the subject property. So the subject property is a part of the Meridian Place subdivision number 1. With the subdivision, the property established a 26.6-foot easement on the southern boundary. There's currently this is currently a well property that is owned and maintained by the city of Meridian. And the city is currently constructing a second building on the property as a part of the conditions of approval, they were required to vacate the proposed easement prior to certificate of occupancy of that building. So relinquishment letters were received. Staff is recommending approval and has not received any written testimony, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions for staff? Okay. Would the applicant like to make any comments? The applicant waives unless council has any questions. Okay. Ms. Crick, you want to sign up to provide testimony on this item?
Mr. Mayor, nobody signed up online. I did not check the back.
Okay, is there anybody present that would like to provide testimony on this item? Or if you're online, you can use the raise your hand feature and we can invite you in. Seeing no one coming forward, does the applicant waive final comments? Applicant waives final comments. Council, direction.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
move that we close the public hearing.
Have a motion second to close the public hearing for H 2025-0055. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
straightforward. I move that after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2025-0055 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of February 10th, 2026.
Second?
Have a motion a second to approve item H 2025-0055. Is there a discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Taylor. Strader. Whitlock.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Overton.
All ayes, motion carries. The item is agreed to. Okay, next item up is item 5, public hearing for Silva's First Subdivision, SHP 2025-0007. We'll open this public hearing with staff comments.
Mayors, members of the council, next item on the agenda is Silva's First Subdivision, which is a short plat application. So the site does consist of 0.2 acres of land zoned R15 located at 303 West Pine Avenue. The flume designation for this property is Old Town. There we go. Get a zoomed in version for you. So the request tonight is a short plat to subdivide an existing parcel consisting of 0.2 acre, 2.2 acre lot into 2 building lots in R15 zoning district. There is an existing single-family home that will remain on Lot 1, Block 1, and will be accessed via an existing driveway coming off West Pine Avenue. And this access off Pine Avenue does require a city council waiver to remain in place tonight. Lot 2, Block 1 is proposed to take access off of Northwest 3rd Street through a future new single-family home. In addition, there is an existing carport and shed that is on the southern portion of the property that will be required to be removed in order to conform to the required setbacks. The applicant has agreed to remove these accessory structures, and both structures will be removed prior to the city engineer's signature. So the property is conforming with the dimensional standards in the district and the setbacks. And staff is recommending approval with conditions at this time, and it has not received any written testimony. And I'll stand for any questions you have.
Thank you. Council, any questions for staff? Okay, will the applicant like to come forward? The applicant is waiving testimony. Anyone stand up to provide testimony on this item?
Mr. Mayor, no.
Okay, is there anybody present that would like to provide testimony on this item? Yeah. Applicant waive final comments? I'm going to take that as a yes. But if you're, I need to have you come up to the mic if you want to speak. So it's, yeah, if you can just come up and say your name and address for the record, and that would be great.
My name is Zach Matson. I'm the developer for this parcel. I'm not the owner of the lot. We're just doing this for somebody else. Yeah, so pretty much just the objective is to split the lot off. The homeowner is going to build a house on it. So the main thing is just I guess the waiver for the driveway that is already existing on Pine Avenue. So that house has been there for 60 years, been pulling off that driveway for the entire time. So we don't think that's a big ask to keep that driveway in place because that's currently how it's serving parking.
Okay. Council, any questions? Okay, thank you very
Thank
much. Council, your direction.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
I believe a driveway that's been in place for 60 years is probably good for a few more years. Would move that we approve file number SHP 2025-005 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of February 10th, 2026, and waive the requirement concerning the driveway and allow it to remain in place.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to approve item 5, SHP 2025-0007. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Taylor. Strainer. Whitlock.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Overton.
All ayes, motion carries, and item is agreed to. Okay, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to item 6, which is ordinance number 26-2110. Ask clerk to read this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an ordinance annexing land located in the east half of the southeast quarter of Section 29, Township 4 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, Ada County, Idaho, as depicted in the map exhibit. Rezoning 70.558 acres of such real property from RUT to R15 zoning district. Directing city staff to alter all applicable use and area maps, as well as the official zoning maps and all official maps depicting the boundaries and the zoning districts of the city of Meridian in accordance with this ordinance. Providing the copies of this ordinance shall be filed with the Ada County Assessor, the Ada County Treasurer, the Ada County Recorder, and the Idaho State Tax Commission as required by law, repealing conflicting ordinances and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Council, you've heard this ordinance read by title. Is there anybody that would like it read in its entirety? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Mayor,
Councilman Taylor.
move that we approve ordinance number 26-2110.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 26-2110. Is there any discussion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh, Taylor, Reader, Whitlock, Little Roberts, Overton.
All ayes, motion carries. The item is agreed to. Council, anything under future meeting topics?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Schrader.
I just have a request. I'd love to hear what our thought process is around CFP planning for the year and just understand what we're thinking on that. Last year we had, each department do a presentation of what was in their CFP, kind of high level items. I feel very strongly that the CFP process is important, and that's been a big part of our success, and would just like to hear that we have a plan for that to continue, or alternatively, what our other plan is. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Duly noted. I know I spoke to the council president about that, and I know he's working on it. So, okay. Anything else, or do I have a motion to adjourn? Councilman Overton.
Motion we adjourn.
Motion second adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.